If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I am here with Jonathan Gelatt, who is the fairly new owner of the Rivoli Theater in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Jonathan, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I guess we should probably start with how your life changed last year. Why don't you tell us about that?
So I'm in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and there's an old theater here, about a 100-year-old theater called the Rivoli. And it's been my favorite place in La Crosse for a very long time. They serve alcohol, they serve pizza, and they played second-run movies fairly cheap, right, on a discount. So I moved back to La Crosse in 2016 from the East Coast. And last year, I was kind of sniffing around to start a theater somewhere or see where the theaters in town were at. Because we basically have one big chain, and then we have the Rivoli, which has 2 screens, and then we have another old theater in town called the Hollywood that has unfortunately been closed down for a while. So the Rivoli is part of a big office building, actually. It's a whole Rivoli building, and there's a theater in the bottom of it. And so the building was for sale, I should say that. But you couldn't really find out if the theater or the business was for sale at all. Now, luckily, I'm not the only owner of the theater. My sister, Clara, who also lives in La Crosse, is a co-owner, and so is my brother, Philip Gelatt. But he lives out in Rhode Island, so he's kind of a distant partner. So Clara has a lot more business sense than I do. And we toured this building, and I looked around and felt very discouraged because I was like, I don't know what to do with a whole building. This is so much, and we don't even know if the business is for sale. But luckily, my sister had kind of the Ray Stantz moment where she felt like she could make the building work. So we put in an offer, and the previous owner had passed, and his wife was kind of looking to offload it. But she didn't want the theater to go away because he had such a passion for it. Right. So we included in our letter of intent to purchase that we would always keep it as a movie theater. And that's like the main reason to do it. And we kind of asked, if you're ever going to sell the business, would you let us make the first offer? And she got right back to us and said, I've kind of been waiting, like the business is for sale, but I've been waiting to hear from somebody who's going to tell me this. Because all of the other plans involved gutting the theater and turning it into an underground parking garage. So luckily we prevented that from happening, especially because back in 2016 when I moved to La Crosse, I said if the Rivoli closes, I'm probably going to jump off one of these bridges because I don't know where else I'm going to go see movies in town other than the big theater, which has its perks, but like it's not as much fun, it doesn't have personality. Right. So yeah, that's how my life changed. And then last June, the purchase went through and my sister, my brother and I got to work pretty fast, making some light upgrades to the lobby and some other stuff, and then kind of changing up the programming and really just trying to get people's attention. And we've done a lot to open the doors up to groups in town. So like, for instance, this weekend we have a thing called the Crosse Adventure Films, which is basically a lot of guys. I always end up missing it and I feel bad. But it's a lot of guys who go out and they shoot their own GoPro footage. They shoot extreme stunts. They shoot all their sports stuff. And then they come and play it in the theater. And they bring like 250 people every single time. It's great. And this week, actually, they're doing their first film fest. So they have the theater booked for 2 nights. And the first night is like even more amateur, like kids are going to play their videos there too.
Oh,
so,
sweet.
Yeah, my life changed pretty rapidly. But in a weird way, it also didn't, because all I ever did was talk about movies anyway. And I said to my friends, like, I'm sorry that all I do now is invite you to the Rivoli. I hope you guys know that like this business isn't a huge money maker for us. And they said, they all I ever did was invite them to the Rivoli anyway, so they didn't really seem to mind that, their lives didn't change. I'm still being like, hey guys, let's go see another movie at the Rivoli.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I should say though that the business has been doing pretty well this past year, and like it was already breaking even just about when we took it over.
Wow.
So it was never like hemorrhaging money, and we're kind of lucky that people in La Crosse really enjoy it, and we're also lucky that Barbie came out this summer and we were able to play it. We were lucky that Mario Brothers came out this summer and we were able to play that. So yeah, it's one of those things that, like, I don't know, my life totally changed, and it's hard for me to take credit for it because I'm just doing what feels natural to me with this theater.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there's lots of reasons to have this discussion, and I'm eager to dive into all of them. For many people that watch my stuff, the dream is to set up in some old theater and just play whatever your heart pleases and relive the life-changing memories that you had as a child. Try to bring about those wonderful, like, Frisian moments where you're watching a movie and your body goes numb and you start to get goosebumps because you get that magical feeling again. One of the first things I gotta know, for somebody that's going to buy an old art house theater, what's that first theater experience that you remember?
Let me think. My very first theater I can remember, I definitely remember being absolutely scared. Is it all right if I curse on this podcast?
Of course, yeah, as much as you want.
Absolutely Scared Shitless by Ernest Scared Stupid.
Love it.
And my mom was in a different theater. I think she was seeing, and I have to check the dates, He Said, She Said. So I'm in the Ernest Scared Stupid theater with my brother and sister. And so many of my early movie memories are with my brother and sister, which is why it's so great that it's the three of us running this.
Right.
So I had to run between the two theaters, and the ushers ended up waiting outside Ernest Scared Stupid for me because my brother would no longer take me to the other theater. And they knew I was coming out, and they had to take me straight to my mom. But then my mom didn't want me in her movie either because it was R-rated. So that was one of the first ones. And then I remember, this is not like I got to see it, and I don't actually remember seeing it. But I remember trying to see Home Alone, and it was sold out. And it blew my mind that a movie could be sold out. Like, there were no tickets left.
Right.
And I feel like I was probably pretty upset, but I was only about 5 when that movie came out, most likely. So that's one of my first memories of like getting to a theater and being in the lobby and kind of like seeing all the stuff going on. Those would probably be the two biggest that I really remember as far as early. And then I have millions after that, or hundreds after that. But
so what is some of the first, monumental times that made you go, damn, this really is a magical experience and so much better than watching it on a, fuzzy little CRT TV.
Well, I mean, so my stepdad took me to see Die Hard with a Vengeance when I was 9. And that definitely blew my mind on a level of, well, like, I know I shouldn't be seeing this, but this is so much fun. So much more fun than everything else I've been seeing. So that kind of that didn't make me feel the theatrical experience necessarily, but Bruce Willis and Die Hard movies really got me into movies a lot. And then it really was like horror movies. I'm trying to think of some early ones that I saw, horror movies that were just the best. This is one that I don't know if it's early or not, but it was one of those like, oh my God, and actually now that I think about it, it's what I do at the theater. I managed to trick a bunch of my friends' girlfriends into going to see Cabin Fever with us when it first came out. And like, basically because of Halo, I had crossover in my friend groups, right? Where it was like jocks and nerds, and everybody in my school was pretty cool with each other. But these guys had like preppy girlfriends, and they all knew me because they grew up with me, and they all kind of knew horror movies and stuff. And Cabin Fever was brand new, and everybody didn't have anything to do that night. And so I managed to convince them to invite all their girlfriends to come. And I knew it was going to be a nasty movie because my brother Philip had seen it the night before and called me up and been like, you will love this movie. You have to go see it as soon as possible. Nice. And that one was super fun. And like during certain notorious scenes in that movie, when everybody was losing it, it was like, oh, I really like watching other people react to this stuff. This is more fun than being at home alone and watching it. And then I think like the really big, and then I'd say like my next landmark, I love big screen theatrical experiences for any kind of movie, was when I was older. I was like 27 or so, and I went and saw Barry Lyndon in New York in a big theater, and I got to go by myself, which made it extra fun. And that was one, like, I knew I liked movies in theaters more than movies at home, and I knew I liked going to see repertory screenings of things. But that was when it really clicked, where it's like, oh, every movie should be seen like this. this Barry Lyndon, I had given it tons of shots in the past, and I just wasn't mature enough for it. It was too young. It wasn't The Shining, so I'm like, why am I watching this Kubrick movie?
Right.
And that one really blew my mind, and like is something I think about a lot, I think.
Interesting. That's a good pick. Not enough people talk about Barry Lyndon nowadays, for sure.
No, and it's one that like I hesitate to show to people at home because I want to wait and see if we can play it at the Rivoli someday and like do it the proper way. Same with Sorcerer. I've still never seen Sorcerer in a theater. And that's one that I haven't shown that many friends yet at home, just because I'm like, other than people who've seen it already or like my other big nerd friends in town. But the layman, I would rather have them see it in a major theater or on a big screen.
Well, I really want to dive into one thing that you said already, and I'm sure this is going to be a big question for a lot of people watching this, is if they had the ability to purchase a theater, is it even a wise move? And you've already said this last year has been pretty decent, but yet from every other angle, all we're hearing is doomsday. All we're hearing is that the theater experience is dead or dying, that nobody's going to the theater. How are you breaking even when AMC is struggling to put anybody in a seat?
I mean, the very blunt truth is alcohol sales. Yep. If your theater can sell alcohol, you've got a good bottom line. Like it's solid there. So we only do 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock showings. And because of the Wisconsin law, no outside entity can determine our ticket prices. So we can discount new movies very cheap. Like we were playing Barbie for $8 most of the summer. Granted, that $8 we have, our seats aren't as comfortable, our sound isn't quite as good. All these other things that you're not going to get at Marcus Cinemas is the other big one around here. So Marcus Cinemas. But having just been at this conference in California, there's a group called NATO that I had no idea existed before this. It's called National Association of Theater Owners. And anybody who's interested in owning a theater, buying one, should really go look them up because they have a lot of good resources for people who are even curious about it. But at this conference, I didn't get a sense of fear from the independent theater owners. I got it more from the chains, or there was a little bit more hubbub in the room. Theater owners, the smaller theater owners, I mean, obviously there's worry because it's not a solid business. And you got to have a lot of passion. Like you got to really love it and you got to really want people to come there. And we lucked out in that 2 of the managers of the theater have been there for over 10 years. Their names are Sam and Tony, and they are really solid guys, and they stuck with us. Like, change of ownership. I was so scared we were going to lose Sam because I already kind of knew him from going to the theater all the time. And like change of ownership, all my friends were like, all the staff is going to leave once you take over. And I was like, oh no, like I have no idea what we're doing if they go. So that definitely gave us a leg up. But yeah, the other thing I got is from the independent theater owners, sorry, I'm stumbling over my words now, is that they're seeing somewhat of a bump in people wanting to go back out. I think post-COVID, I mean, we're not really through it. Obviously, you got to be careful. Right. You should wear your mask if you want to. But there's a sense of people are kind of trying to be around others again. And I definitely had that feeling where I used to only like theaters empty a lot of the time or alone. And now I'm like, I don't care if someone talks halfway through this movie if what they're saying is funny. Like, then I won't tell them to leave. So I think that for smaller communities and smaller theaters, if you can get that sense of like passion in your ownership, you can get some managers who are really behind it and really like love the theater as much as you do. You can sell alcohol. That's a big one. And then like the independent theaters are a little bit more flexible than the big chains because we can do stuff like the Lacrosse adventure films I mentioned. So I would say if you have a small theater in a town, partner with the other small businesses. That's a big one for us. And you kind of get some tailwind by doing that. So like we have an independent bookstore in our downtown Lacrosse called Pearl Street Books. To get their attention last year, I started introducing a book of the month at the Rivoli and just urging people to go buy it from Pearl Street Books. So Pearl Street Books, then I went over there and dropped off a flyer and they were like, oh, why are you promoting us for free? And I was like, because I love your store and I've been coming here since I was little and I'm trying to get your attention. Right. So that worked. And then the other big thing I would suggest if you end up buying a theater that can help you make some money is do slideshows between your movies. We realize that the blank screen is one of your biggest assets before a movie starts and in between movies, like when you do double features. So Pearl Street Books end up purchasing an ad from us. We still do the book of the month for free, but they give us a copy now to give away. And then they purchase an ad from us, and sometimes they purchase an extra ad if they have an event going on. So there's ways to make money with your theater that aren't just selling tickets to your movie.
Right.
It's scary, obviously. I mean, everything's scary. But if you love it, it's not that bad. And it helps. I mean, you should make sure you got some kind of nest egg or some kind of backup going. I definitely look at my Blu-rays like I'm going to sell them sometime if it ever really comes down to it. I got some out of print ones up there. And like, I mean, don't bankrupt yourself to do it, but I wouldn't say don't do it. I'm sorry, that's a long rambling answer to say I'm not really that scared for the future of the theatrical experience. I think the streaming model is showing clear cracks. That's really who you're competing with an independent theater. That's what all theaters are competing with. I think people like their small town. I think people are hopefully starting to realize like, oh, I kind of want there to be a theater in town that isn't just the big megaplex. Yeah. So yeah, I have to be optimistic kind of, but I don't like the gloom and doom stuff. And frankly, all the gloom and doom stuff, it's coming from people, now I'm going to say things that might get me in trouble, who are being paid too much. All of these executives at these companies, and I love our theater distributors and everything, because they really are great and they're so much fun to work with. But you get the sense that when you look at the budgets on certain movies and you look at the budgets of studios and you're just like, how is all this money being spent? And then it's all this gloom and doom of theaters not making enough money off it. And it's like, well, you've now made it so that your ticket prices have to be high because you have to keep up your giant recliners. The movies, you're still sending most of your movie ticket dollars back to the studio anyway. They're not making fun choices anymore. They're making expensive, bland choices that either pay big or they don't pay at all. I wouldn't say Barbie was an expensive, bland choice, but a lot of the other ones. So all of that gloom and doom, I think it's not coming from the ground up. It's coming from the top down in a lot of ways. And I don't know. I'm not for it.
I would agree. I tend to be more positive about it as well, but that's, I don't know, maybe I'm jaded a little bit, but I've felt that magical position. And when you know that exists, and I can never have a 110-foot screen in my room. I'm dying to see something like an old John Carpenter film or Barry frickin' Lyndon on a giant screen and change my life again at that point. So there's no reason for doom and gloom. Sure, there's doom and gloom if you're releasing Expendables 9, I guess, and that's your big tentpole movie. But that's a different story, I guess. So on the content side, what just to find out who you are, what would have been like the most exciting films for you over the last, we'll say, 3 years? Keep it fairly recent.
Okay, do you want exciting movies that are new, or do you want exciting movies that we played and I couldn't believe the response they got?
Yes, obviously I want both.
I was going to say, can I give you both?
Yeah.
Let me give you, so the best new movies of the last couple years. Shoot, I don't know. Let me think about it for a few minutes of ones that really blew my mind. Because I watched so many old movies, it gets difficult. Right. And like, I mean, if my siblings listen to this, they'll laugh because I'm going to say the magic words. I watched about 30 Charles Bronson movies in a year. Magic words being Charles Bronson. So like, I've always kind of been behind the times on something. So I don't waste my time, but I spend a lot of time digging up old movies and like, trying to find things out about them. Now that I say it, I loved The Northman. And The Northman was my last hurrah movie at the Rivoli before I became an owner. And by last hurrah movie, I mean, I drank to excess. I put my M&Ms in my beer at one point and loved the movie, like absolutely loved it. It was so so like over the top. When absurd violent things happen in movies, I sometimes spontaneously laugh. So there's a smash cut in that movie where the Northman kills somebody who's sleeping. And I just remember dying laughing and being like, that was great. I enjoyed that so much. I'm trying to think of other really new movies in the past couple years that I loved. I might have to look at a list in a second of some big ones that came out, because there's some very obvious like Oscar winners I know I'm blanking on.
Right.
Let me go back to the other one and then I'll come back to new movies. To get to know me though, like I'm always excited for a horror movie. I watched No One Will Save You last night, the new one on Hulu. I'm annoyed it was on Hulu because the whole time I'm like, this would be so much fun in a theater.
How is it not a theatrical film? It's a wonderful film. Yeah.
Like give it a little bit more money for some of the special effects. And yeah, it's so much fun. And some of those scenes, like I was watching it with my wife and we were blocking our eyes and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could play this one. So I love horror movies. I love new sci-fi. I'm kind of game for anything. A lot thanks to my older brother Philip, who basically just cultured the hell out of me with movies when I was young, or like wouldn't allow me to have bad taste. He was giving me Tom Waits in like 6th grade, and being like, please play this instead of Limp Bizkit in your house or in your room. And I didn't for at least 5 years. And then when I did, I was like, oh, wow, Phil, this is really good. So anyways, that's always helped me just have like a wide taste in movies, I guess. Like I'll kind of go see anything. I did really like Barbie. I had a lot of fun seeing that. Like, I think don't take it too seriously. I just enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And then I watched a lot of kid stuff because I got kids. So I enjoyed the new Turtles movie a lot. I find that everybody who doesn't have kids didn't like the new Turtles, and everybody who does have kids likes the new Turtles. I guess that's just how it goes. And then I haven't seen some of his latest stuff, but I'm a big, dumb fan of Nicholas Winding Refn's films. So Only God Forgives is one that I skipped in theaters, and I'm still kicking myself because I love that movie. Yeah. Again, like anything that's drenched in neon and has usually between a 50 to 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, those are kind of my movies. Or like I'll read bad reviews for movies, and they'll sound like good reviews to me. Yeah. Like Only God Forgives has one or two that were just about how nihilistic and violent and filled with dread it is. And I was like, oh my God, this sounds great. Yeah, I gotta see this one.
There's so many reviewers that all they'll talk about is all this is depraved violence, and you don't need to see it. I'm like, no, now it's kind of on the checklist.
Mm-hmm. I also, speaking of, I like S. Craig Zahler movies, like Greg Across Concrete, and man, I love his movies. But those are ones that I know no one really else wants to watch with me sometimes. Some people seem to think that he's like a controversial figure. I don't. I also don't subscribe really to content, or like, what is it? Consumption equals you're endorsing what's going on in the movie. Yeah. Hence my love of Charles Bronson movies. Like, you know, I don't endorse what he's doing in 10 to Midnight. I think it's absurd, but it's one of my new favorite movies.
Of course.
Yeah. So the movies that got reactions this year that I was surprised about in a good way. One of the main things we did when we took over the theater is start this thing called Cult Movie Night. It kind of started with Schlocktoberfest last year, which was just a big... It started as I wanted to do a lock-in on Oktoberfest weekend because I never liked Oktoberfest. So I'm like, what if all the weirdos in town all went and saw movies instead?
Right.
And then I realized you can't really loudspeaker over Oktoberfest in La Crosse. It's such a big event here. So we pushed it to later in the month, and we like promote it during Oktoberfest. And that got a good enough reaction that then I was like, okay, well, let's try and do like a once a month kind of off the cuff weird movie night. And we did it 1st December of last year. We called it Holiday Horror Night. And we did what's it called? Rare Exports. The one about the Killer Santa, And then we did Don't Open Till Christmas, the one about the serial killer Santas.
Yep.
And that went over well, and it was fun, but there was something kind of missing about it. And I was like, oh, there's people here who don't know why these movies are good or fun, so we should have like a pre-roll that tells them why. Right. So we started doing a pre-show that's like little clips of the interviews from around the movie, or kind of mood-setting things, some slides with Did You Know trivia on it. So then Cult Movie Night started, and we've gotten the best reaction from Cult Movie Night. Like, I knew weirdos would come out for it, but I'm surprised that they're coming out every once a month. So it's a double feature once a month. And the one that really blew my mind this summer was The Warriors, which is always in my top 5 movies. And I assumed most people had seen, or most Cult Movie Night fans had seen. We played it with The Road Warrior, and the movie starts, and the Warriors played second. And I like ran up to the booth to turn up the sound, because on older movies, we always got to monkey with the sound a little bit. Ran back down and sat down, and I was kind of like giggling to myself in my seat at some of the lines like I knew, but it was dead silent in the theater. So then it continues to be dead silent, and I'm like, oh no, like people are hating this. Right. And then after a minute, it clicked with me. I'm like, oh, they love it, and no one in here has seen it really. And then I got goosebumps for sure. I get goosebumps even talking about it. Like the moment when I was like, oh, wait a second, I'm in a room with like at least 70% of the people in here have not seen this movie. And afterwards, it turned out that they hadn't. A lot of people, when I was talking to them on their way out, and they were just like, oh, thank you for playing this. It's always been on my list, but I've never made an excuse to watch it. Wow. And I was like, man, I'm so envious, because I watched this one on a VHS on a 12-inch TV for the first time, and you got to come and see it like here for the first time with a bunch of your friends after The Road Warrior. So that one got a huge reaction. The other one that surprised me was Big Trouble in Little China. So we made that our 420 movie. And we're always going to make our 420 movie not like a stoner movie. Like this year, I'm really hoping we can get Roadhouse. Nice. But like something that would be like, you know, it's the kind of movie you would get stoned or drunk and watch, but it's not about weed, because a lot of those weed comedies, they aren't really what you want to watch anyways. Right. We kind of looked out for the weather, so we played that on April 20th. Our main theater can hold up to 250 people if it's full. And then our screening room is like a 50-seater. So all week we were kind of deciding, well, do we want to put Big Trouble in Little China in the big theater and the little theater to see how the ticket sales go? And we're like, well, let's just put it in the big theater. And at the beginning of the day, we had about 30 tickets sold. And luckily it was raining that day. And by the end of the day, I think about 150 people came out for Big Trouble in Little China, which absolutely blew my mind because I did not see that one coming. We still can't figure out why that one did so well. I think it's a combination of factors. 420 is kind of a holiday, right?
Yeah.
We're looking for something to do, especially go to a movie. It was raining, so that helps us. We hadn't played any John Carpenter since taking over yet. And that movie's PG-13. So I saw, which also made me super happy, a lot of like 12-year-olds and their dads. Or like guys, about our age now, and their kids are 12 or 13.
Yep.
And they were like, they loved it, and they all like applauded and had a great time. So that was a really big one. And I think I'll just stay on the cult movie nights. I'm sure I could find another time in the past year where a new movie did that for me. Actually, wait, can I give you two?
Always, yeah.
I got two.
Keep it going. These are great.
So at the beginning of cult movie night, we wanted to make it like more than just 70s and 80s and like horror and sci-fi. We've since learned that's kind of what the audience wants. But we also did like a Western month where we did Quick and the Dead and Desperado. So we'll still do action and stuff like that. And the first one we did was Cyborg and Nemesis. So the second one we did was like a little bit more, I guess, cult classic, like highfalutin. And we did Harold and Maude, and we couldn't get the Heartbreak Kid, so we did Shampoo.
Oh, nice.
Now,
okay.
Yeah, which is fun. And like it went well. And I think what we'll do from now on is a movie like Harold and Maude, we'll just do like a cult movie night presents, because it's kind of hard to double feature. Like, let's say, have you ever seen With Nail and I?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's one of my wife's favorite movies, and I'm dying to play it at the theater. But like With Nail and I, what do you play that with? It's not really like a cult movie night kind of vibe. Like we're partying with our friends on a Saturday night. So Harold and Maude, though, I had seen it 3 times previously. Enjoyed it. It never really clicked with me. Whatever. It was in the small room with about 50 people, and the small room has much better sound, and it's like you're really locked in. It's kind of like if you were in like a billionaire's basement and he had like a small theater, maybe like a millionaire's basement, not a billionaire's basement. Right. So everybody in the theater was so into it, and you could just feel how much they all loved it. And like I actually paid close attention. Some of the shots of Harold and Maude like walking through the poppy fields, or they're walking through a field of grass on a TV, not that impressive. I mean, it's cool. Right. On a big screen, I was like, I feel as though my entire view is filled with this green, and it looks amazing.
It's overwhelming.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. And so that's one where it was like Harold and Maude, I had like fought to make it feel something for this movie other than, yeah, it's good. And now I do, because of that one experience with these other 50 people. And it's a lot, I think, because there were so many people, it's their favorite movie of all time were in the room. Right. And they were all being like quiet during it. They weren't like talking over it or anything. So then the last one is like on the opposite scale. Harold and Maude, emotions, all these things. We played The Toxic Avenger in June. And this is when I thought I was going to get in trouble. It's the first time I ever thought that like, maybe somebody's going to complain, because I'm waiting for somebody to start complaining about some of the movies we're playing. Right. And like starting The Toxic Avenger. So we played it with The Crow. It was a cult movie night choice. We were doing superheroes. And The Crow got a really big response. And that was one too that I actually didn't see The Crow when I was a kid. And all my friends were like, how did you not see The Crow? You love Nine Inch Nails and you were black all the time. So I finally saw it when I was like in my 20s and liked it. And then we were doing superheroes. And The Crow, I love how much people love that movie. And I get it now. I'd seen it on TV. That's one in theaters was much better. Brandon Lee, it's so sad that he couldn't even complete the film too, because you feel it once he doesn't have as many lines. He's so good at basically being a scary Batman. Yeah. But then Toxic Avenger, I felt like a roller coaster was starting when the movie started, because I was like, oh man, this is either going to go over really well or half this theater's about to walk out. And there were parts in the movie where my wife was like texting me, like, you're going to get in trouble for this, because she was in the theater too. And she knew it, like she'd seen it before. And later on, she's like, I was like, don't try and text me these things. They're going to make me feel bad at the movie we're playing. She's like, I know, I just get nervous. You're going to get in trouble. So the movie starts, and I knew we had to get through the part where they run over the kid. And then I felt like we were in the clear. If the audience got through that and the dog in the... That's it. And then we're good. Like the rest of the movie never gets as shocking as that. We got through it, and there were these guys in the back who were like 19 or 20. And when the movie ended, they started like cheering like they were at a concert. They'd never seen it before. They'd never seen a single Troma movie before. Their dad is a bass player in one of my best friend's bands, and he like has got all these young guys to come to cult movie night a bunch. And when they started cheering like that, I got goosebumps because I was like, oh my God, it fucking worked. Like we pulled it off.
Yeah.
And then it made me even feel better. A couple weeks later, we were working at a campus event and just telling people about the theater. This guy came up to me, who's a regular, I'd seen him there before. And he was like, I went and saw a Toxic Avenger with my sister. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, about 20 minutes in, she asked me if it was a porno. And then I was like, oh, no. And then he's like, yeah, and about 40 minutes in, she asked me if it was a porno again. And I was like, and this guy goes, I said to her, if this is a porno, it's the least sexy porno ever made. And then he's like, oh, my sister laughed. And like, we had a great time. Like, she thought it was funny. So at first I was like, oh, no. But it turned out that they had a good night anyway. So those would be the 4 big, like, cult movie night moments I'd say I'd have in the last year.
We are kin, at least. This is always within arm's reach at the moment.
Yeah. I'm excited for the new one. I was a little nervous, but once I looked at the creative team behind it and like it's getting good reviews so far, I think it'll be all right. It's never going to be like the original. I mean, the original, that's one that blew my mind about movies in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Because we used to have a video store here called Videoland with a staff recommendation section, and they would let me rent anything. Like, I don't really know why they would let me rent anything, but I think
because they're good people.
Yeah. They wouldn't let me rent the Jerry Springer, like, Too Hot for TV tapes. I remember that.
Smart.
Yeah, smart. But all the other stuff, they really didn't care. So yeah, I remember renting Toxic Avenger in middle school and being like, oh man, this is a fantastic movie. And then I went on a spree where all I watched was trauma movies for about 5 years. And like, my wife and I have been going back and watching a lot of 90s Oscar bait, as I call it, because I just had such disdain for that stuff at the time. Yeah. So I never saw Apollo 13, Saving Private Ryan. I've never seen Schindler's List. I've never seen like a lot of this stuff because I was too busy being really hardcore watching trauma movies.
I love that trauma is like the anti-Schindler's List. So that is, I mean, that's perfect. That's the exact type of thing that when you launch this, I imagine that you're hoping for, that you can change somebody's life with Lloyd Kaufman, I guess. That sort of thing, though, is it's great with a group, but so different with a group that knows the film in a theater. And that's why places like the Rivoli are so damn important. And rep screening goes so much further than people even know. I feel like there's so many people that just don't pay attention. They think theater and they think, Warner Brothers and Universal and Disney, and that's about it. And everything after that, it's off their radar entirely. And it's so depressing to think about. But I got to imagine that you have a lot of dreams like me. What's a rep screening that you've never been able to do that you're hoping someday? I'm programming the hell out of this.
Well, I have my one movie that I've been told I'm not allowed to charge ticket prices for, which is Kinjite Forbidden Secrets, the Charles Bronson, J. Lee Thompson movie. Specifically, I love Charles Bronson and J. Lee Thompson movies. So that's like my devil horn face. I can't wait to play these movies, specifically 10 to Midnight and Kinjite. Like, I've been dying to play those. On the other side of it, Sorcerer is a big one. And now that Friedkin passed, like we're attempting to do a Friedkin series. So we're playing The Exorcist later this month. We're going to do The French Connection next month. And like, we'll do a special pre-roll, but it won't be a one night only. It'll play all week.
Nice.
And because we did, when we first took over the theater, we played, The Godfather, because James Caan passed. But we've always kind of said, like, what do we do when a big gun passes? Like when Scorsese dies, you're not just going to pick one. So Friedkin's kind of our first test for that. And Sorcerer was on my list of one that I like kind of dreamed to play. Barry Lyndon would be one I would love. I'm trying to think of the other big ones. We're doing Bram Stoker's Dracula this month, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. But that one's less of a pipe dream because it's Dracula. And like I figured that one we'd be able to get to at some point. I'm trying to think of some other big ones. I'd like to be able to start doing some rep screenings of stuff like Only God Forgives. Kind of like get people to dig into even the past 2 decades of movies that have come out. Because there's been a lot. So you can't just only rep house screen the same stuff again and again. And a big goal at this theater, and I don't know how successful we've been at it so far, we are at Cult Movie Night, is I kind of want to like retrain the Little Lacrosse audience or something to push their boundaries and just trust what we're playing so we can start playing weirder content. We can get people to come see a drama from the 70s or something or like The Long Goodbye. We haven't played that one yet. I'd love to play The Long Goodbye. I'm sure we could get some people to come to it. Yeah. But that kind of stuff that isn't it isn't going to grab, let's say, a nerd like me because it's not horror, sci-fi, or shock. But maybe it'll grab some of the nerds like me who just like all film, and we can grab some other people who like prestige film now, or they love A24 stuff that's coming out, but they don't even know about all this older stuff that is out there. And they don't know, like, don't go stream it. Our theater is actually probably cheaper than renting it on streaming sometime. Just come and see it here, and you'll have a much better time. One thing say is my evil pipe dream movie.
One thing that we should probably dive into is La Crosse itself. I've not indicated this to you yet. I don't know how close it is because I haven't looked at a map. When I was 17, I went to Hayward, Wisconsin to visit my aunt, and I fell in love with the place. We drove all around, visited a couple of the small parts of Minnesota, and at the time I was originally from Southern California in the desert, so Wisconsin was a freaking dreamscape. Everything about that place was like, I've only seen this in the movies. Everything was green. Everything was friendly. Everything was, I drove by, I think near my aunt's place is where they do the annual lumberjack competitions or something. I don't have any real
Did you go to the candy store there? No. Okay. So it's funny you say Hayward because that's one of the only places in Wisconsin. The three places I know in Wisconsin the best are La Crosse, Hayward, and Madison. Because I used to go to Hayward a lot. Like my dad had a cabin up there, and we'd go up there in the summer. But yeah, so you've been to Hayward.
It's magical. I love that place. But I've never been to La Crosse, so I'd love to hear what the community is, how close is your finger to the overall sense of what they like, and what are you envisioning for their future?
Well, so La Crosse is a town of just about 52,000, and we are in southwestern Wisconsin, right on the Mississippi and right on the border to Minnesota. So it makes us a little different than some Wisconsin towns because we're right on the Mississippi, so we're very much a river town. And definitely a drinking culture in La Crosse, which has its pros and cons. Obviously, if you own a theater that serves alcohol and you drink alcohol, it's a pro a lot of the time. And the community, it's good. It's a good mix. Like, we're kind of a little bit of a liberal enclave, right? But not so much that I would ever describe La Crosse as a bubble. And I, having lived in New York and Madison, I would describe those as being bubble-like. And our community, I mean, we have a lot of Hmong people in town who I wish would come to the theater more. I got to reach out to them somehow. Hmong people, if you're not familiar, come from Southeast Asia. They were basically displaced by the Vietnam War, and a lot of them got moved to the Midwest, is the long and short of it. Yep. So that's always been part of our culture here. And as far as what I envision for them for the future, I mean, our downtown right now has a lot of good energy because there's a lot of young owners who are taking over smaller businesses. And I'm now one of them. And so there was kind of an old guard, and there still sort of is, who really didn't want to work with each other on, like, for example, there's a coffee shop up the street. When we do movie marathons, I buy big jugs of their iced coffee, and then we sell it and serve it and, like, re-promote them. Nice. But there was kind of a little bit of a closed off sense of like, well, what is this really going to do for me? And that seems to have loosened, at least from people that I'm talking to. And, I'm just envisioning hopefully a revitalization of the downtown. We're seeing a little bit of a population influx, which is nice, which is why I wanted the theater to stay, because you got to give people reasons to go downtown. Exactly. Like we have a couple good music venues, and we have a lot of bars. We have some good restaurants, but like nothing else to do downtown really. So I wanted that theater to stay there. As far as what I envision for their future, just coming to see more of my movies. Yeah. No, I mean, I would love it if they did, obviously. And one big thing is our theater currently is not very well heated in the winter, but this winter is going to be the last cold winter. So next winter is going to be great. What they like to see, it's interesting because I can get a weird read on some movies if people have just heard of them. Like you and I, we assume everybody's heard of a lot of movies that are coming out, but that just isn't the truth. So that's like my movie brain bubble. But for example, Super Mario, I had a sense would be really big because every parent outside my kid's school was asking me if we were going to play it. And luckily we could. So the only company that we can't do new movies with currently is Disney. And I can explain why later. Basically, well, I'll explain why now. Disney makes you choose if you want to play their new movies or if you want to choose from their repertory catalog. Because they have purchased so many other studios, their repertory catalog was far more appetizing to us than their new releases. And it means that we have to sacrifice Marvel and Star Wars However, we can get those movies like about 6 months after they come out if we want to.
Right.
So Mario, I knew we could get right away because it wasn't Disney. And Barbie was the same thing, where Barbie like really early on, and I remember having a discussion with friends and then being like, who is this for? Who do you think is going to come see this?
Yeah.
And I was like, hopefully every single woman in town who's asked me, because every single woman in town asked me, are you getting the Barbie movie? And like, I luckily get to talk to a lot of women because I'm dropping off flyers and stuff downtown, and I try and listen to what they say. Another one that got a weird good reaction was the movie Smoking Causes Coughing. The French, like Quentin, I can't pronounce his last name.
Quentin Depew,
movie. Because I'd seen Robert. I love Robert. I love his other movies. I love his music. And we were doing superheroes, and we couldn't play Guardians. So we had the Spider-Verse movie, and then this was kind of my like, well, here's our superhero content. We're going to play this French one. And I'm thinking of this because one of the women at the bookstore was at the screening of Smoking Causes Coughing that I was at, and like it was getting really big laughs. And she was saying, can you play more stuff like that? Like more foreign films or like really oddball, one night only type stuff. So from younger people, like I'm 38, so I hear from parents what movies they want to see. Older folks, they're still kind of a tough nut to crack. Like Barbie, they started asking me about once everybody else was kind of talking about it. And then younger than me, we get people who ask, like, just play everything A24 does, which I would love to. But because we only have 2 screenings and like the realities of some of our audience not coming to see an A24 movie often enough for us to play it that much, we kind of got to wait on those sometimes until the terms change and we can be a little bit looser with how often we play it. So like we didn't play Beau is Afraid. I personally am not the biggest Ari Aster fan, but I would love to always play his movies because they're interesting. So come January, we'll do like a year in review of last year, and I'll pick a day and play that one twice probably just because it's super long, and really try and be like, hey, if you didn't get to see this in town, I'm going to go see it at our theater that day. We did that with RRR last year too, and that was really fun. Like got a big reaction in January. So the audience, like, I think that they're there. It's just hard to get them out of the house sometimes. I mean, that's how it is everywhere. Babysitters are a thing. Everybody's got kids. Everybody knows things are coming on streaming fairly soon. But I feel like we're on an upswing, or hopefully we're on an upswing. It just takes a lot of constant pushing. And like people really notice in a small town if the owner cares about the business and is like out in front of it.
Right.
So I had to make some pretty big jumps in how I feel, how comfortable I am being in front of people and being in front of a camera and everything. Because my siblings said I have to do all the promo. Like my sister Clara handles so much of the business side of it. It's only fair that when we have to do a silly news report, I should be the one in front of the camera. Then I should be the one like talking to the Cult Movie Night crowd and stuff. And I still haven't started doing it. I should probably get up and say thank you to people before the movie starts at Cult Movie Night. But that's given me, in a lot of good ways, a better insight into what lacrosse is like, because I'm much looser talking to people now, to the point where I moved back 3 years before my sister did. But people thought I moved back after her, because until this, I stayed home. I hung out with my friends. I didn't
Watch
really
movies.
try and watch movies, had kids, didn't really try and push myself out there much. And now that I have, I get a sense that lacrosse is like, it's kind of like the independent movie business. Everybody is optimistic, but everybody's kind of like still gripping, like, optimistic, but you got to keep your hands on the controls or else things could slide very easily. You could start getting lazy with the care we're putting into the theater, or like we do a lot of decorating, a lot of stuff like that. Like kind of can't take those things for granted sometimes.
Well, it's downtown. You kind of got to do that, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the community, all that. I really want to say, and this will only take a quick second. Tom, you have somebody that goes to your theater all the time. Tom's the one that said, I need to talk to Jonathan.
Tom is the man. I love you, Tom.
Tom is amazing. I got to meet Tom in person about a month ago, and it was fantastic. He came down to Kansas City. Lovely guy. Love that dude.
No, can I talk about Tom for a second?
Please, yes.
'Cause I'm going to use Tom as like, he was like a beacon in the darkness at one point. Or not really, but he sort of proved my point. Last year, when we first took over, we sat down, a bunch of us in staff and my sister, and we kind of went through like, what are our target demos? And we took the Cult Movie Night demo was like a big one. And it was kind of like, are there enough guys like basically Jonathan? Like we used me as the example, who will not only come, but they'll come repeatedly and they'll tell their friends to come and they'll like appreciate it. And then there was some night where Tom, like I still do it. Like I'll follow anybody who tags the Rivoli on Instagram, and I'll usually like pop in and like your things. And and he was doing it consistently. And then I went to his page, and I thought I had a good Blu-ray collection. And I was like, and I have friends back in New York who are obsessed with their Blu-rays too. And I would send them Tom's account and be like, this guy's putting all of us to shame. So finally, I just kind of figured out where he was sitting in the theater and introduced myself to him. And he's so much fun to talk to, but he was one of the first like Cult Movie Night customers, regulars that I started talking to, and it went easy and well. So then like, it's like, oh, I can talk to other people here. It's no problem. And he was the exact type of person where I'm like, oh yeah, they're coming out. Like we have people in town who are dying for something else to do. That's the other thing I would say about La Crosse and why I'm happy that I grew up here. So Wisconsin itself, right? We can kind of take 2 steps back to your question about Wisconsin, is beautiful and friendly and awesome and nice. And it has these absolutely brutal, awesome winters. I love the winters here. I think they're intense. I don't like springtime when it's getting muddy and you're tired of it. But I really like the winter here, and I think it gives people in Wisconsin something. Unfortunately, that something is sometimes seasonal depression. But a good way to get over it is you go to the movies a lot because there's nothing else to do in town. You stay home, you watch movies, you have time to like pay attention and find out about subcultures. So like we have good metal fans. La Crosse has always had a goth community. There's always been those kind of kids around. And I'm just so happy that they're still here and that we can do this kind of thing for them. Even though some of those kids are now my age, Tom's age, like we're kind of growing up, but we're still here and we're still dying to go do something else. And La Crosse used to have, so it was, I mentioned the Hollywood already, but it was the Rivoli, the Hollywood, it's now Marcus, I don't know what it used to be. There was a Valley View Mall theater and there was a King theater. So when I grew up, we had 5 theaters here. And one of them was downtown and you could sneak into it. And I saw American Psycho there. I saw The Exorcist re-release there. I saw House of a Thousand Corpses there. Some of those I didn't have to sneak in because I just walked behind my brother as he was walking in and just stayed right behind him. But they don't have that anymore. And so they all have streaming and stuff, but it's just, there's too many choices. It's really easy to sit and look at your phone. It's really easy to not watch the whole thing. Yep. And it's harder to find these subcultures, I think, because the internet is so buried in advertisements and trash. And like, it's both really easy to find all the cult movies you want to now online if you know where to look and you have the drive to do it. But it's kind of impossible to get exposed to that subculture if you're like 15 or 16 and you don't know where to start. Yep. So La Crosse and Wisconsin in general has always had these little pockets of weirdos. And like, I want to nurture those weirdos. I want to hold them close and give them like fun stuff to do that isn't just sitting at home, isn't just scrolling TikTok, all that stuff. Yeah,
exactly. With the mention of the 5 theaters and you going to the Rivoli when you were so much younger, did that create like a personal pressure that you're like, oh my God, if this fails, I'm ruining my childhood in a sense?
A little. I mean, there's a little personal pressure. I get my only personal pressure I feel is sometimes I don't like taking credit for it because it feels so natural to me, like what we're doing. Right. There's the pressure of like, I'm in charge of a lot of the programming calendar in general and balancing the new movies and the old movies, which is why I kind of don't want the Marcus Cinemas to close because we didn't play Oppenheimer yet because I know we don't have the sound and the screen for it. Right. Yeah. Like we would have given our audience kind of a subpar Oppenheimer. So we just chose Barbie and then we had Turtles at the same time, which just kind of fits our brand as a theater better. So like, I never really want a Marcus to close. I wouldn't really be killing my childhood if the Rivoli closed because I went to all those theaters. So I love the Rivoli, but I loved the King Theater just as much. The one I was talking to, sinking into. Those were my 2 favorite growing up. And I don't think the Rivoli will close, hopefully. And it was, I'm kind of the worst owner because I walked in there and said nothing could change and it would be perfect. Like I had the race dance moment of this place is great. We should sleep here. So it's not so much pressure on, I don't think anybody's childhood will be ruined if this place closes down. I think if the Rivoli closes down, La Crosse has bigger problems downtown than just that theater closing. I would just hate for, I don't know. It's more like I don't want somebody to come and have a really bad time. Like I would hate for somebody to come and get exposed to something and like have a really bad time there. That's the pressure I feel somewhat. Or have someone go and have their kid have a problem and they couldn't solve it and they felt like their kid had a bad time there. Our basement is kind of scary. We're going to like remodel that. So like, I don't want kids to come and feel scared of the theater because we do a lot of like family and kid programming. And it's great because we're so discounted that these families can actually afford it. I bring my kids there a lot and you can get a pizza. Like you have something to do there. So it's more of the pressure of, I just want those people to come in and enjoy themselves and feel comfortable and safe and like have a good time there. That's the pressure I feel currently, at least. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be here panicking that it's going to close down. And some kid who saw Toxic Avenger on accident there is like, no, don't let it close.
There's still 3 sequels.
Yeah. I got to see Citizen Toxie.
One of the things, you've mentioned Blu-rays twice. Obviously, I've got a wall behind me. Physical media, how does that play into your life with film? Has that always been a part of what you do?
Yeah. I'm always a little bit of a collector. I have records, which I gotta get rid of a bunch of those because those are the things I'm listening to the least now. But the physical release of the Blu-rays, I think once, I always had VHS, right? And then that's the collection I wish I kept, was the VHS collection. Moved to DVD, got rid of a lot of the DVDs. I still have a couple, but like I can get rid of some because they're finally coming out on Blu-ray. Like my One False Move DVD, I can finally retire. And it's just, I don't like the idea of these corporate entities being able to change and control the movies. And they're doing it somewhat already. And even though it takes up space and like I get guff for it, I just love the tangible nature of it. I love the special features. I love the commentaries. Commentaries are so good. I listened to the Bram Stoker's Dracula one the other day. We played Vampire's Kiss at the theater last weekend.
Nice.
The Vampire's Kiss commentary is so much fun. And you get so much out of it that you aren't going to find on the Wikipedia. And something really bothers me about streaming services having control over what movies I am and am not watching and in what format they're doing it in. It just doesn't sit right with me. And there's so many movies being lost. And that's why all these great boutique labels are like amazing. Like I said, it's so easy to find some of these movies I'd never even heard of before. But that's why I'm gobbling them up and like putting them on my shelf because I'm concerned like what's going to happen if they go out of print, what happens when the rights change. The struggle with Dawn of the Dead getting a good release on Blu-ray, like that one was one where I was also like, oh no. Same with, and even though it's one of my favorite movies of all time and one of my favorite directors of all time, I hate the director's cut of The Warriors. And forever, that was the only one you could get on Blu-ray. And it made me insane. And I used to complain about it all the time to the point where I will bring it up as an example to this day. It now has a nice 4K coming out of its theatrical release. There was one that was put out, I think, by Imprint, is a label out of the UK that did the theatrical release. So like I'm almost a little sad because it was my hill to die on for so long. But that's an example of, okay, well, what if this is the only one I can ever get and I can't get it anywhere else? The Star Wars movies was a big example of that too. Like once I realized that the releases that they were putting out weren't even like the VHS tapes. And then once I realized the VHS tapes weren't even like the original releases. I mean, that's always going to stick in Star Wars fans' heart like a knife. So yeah, I think it's having control over my own content. I like having a big library. Same with I have like a lot of books. I think it tells you something about somebody. It's like how I express my taste. I have a collection of Blu-rays on the wall over here. So I'm in my TV room. I'll just turn it around a little bit. So that's the downstairs collection over in the corner above where that dog bed is. But then like I have an upstairs collection that is currently referred to as my psychopath room by my wife because it's a total mess. And like it's a library system in my head. I know where things are.
Same, yeah.
I was in there digging last night and I found like under a pile of clothes a copy of Slumber Party Massacre 2 because I was looking for our backup copy for when we play it next weekend. So now too, and like this is one thing that's made my Blu-ray collection worth it even more so is I'm going to use these for the theater. Like we were going to play Rocky this summer and I was kicking myself for this because I have Rocky at home. I had never seen Rocky. And that was a great theatrical experience this summer. Wow. The UWO football team had bought like 100 seats. So they're all there. I go down there. I've never seen Rocky. I'm like, I'm about to see it with a bunch of football players. This is going to be fun. And the distributor had sent us the wrong key to unlock the movie because sometimes it's got a time code on it. Yep. And we had to switch which days we were playing it. And that's where the miscommunication probably came in. So we couldn't unlock the movie to play it. So we had about a half hour, 20 minutes of delay where we're trying to figure out what to do. I couldn't remember if I had Rocky at home or not. I should, and I hadn't driven my car down. I'd ridden my bike. So it was like going to take me about 20 minutes to get home just to look. Luckily they have like a distributor crisis line or something. We got the key fixed. We played Rocky just fine. I got home and saw it just where Rocky was on my shelf. And I'm like, I have solutions to so many of these problems. Yep. So, like I said, we're doing Schlocktoberfest next weekend. It's happened in the past where we've had drives that have been bad. We've had sound that didn't sync up. We had sound that didn't sync up on The Burning this summer. And I own The Burning. So all I did was we stopped the movie. Somebody like mentioned it. We stopped the movie. I stuck my head out one of the projector windows up there and like shouted down, which was actually super fun. I was like, so what chapter do you guys think we were on? And we like fast forwarded to about where we were. And then we just played the disc and people forgave us. I don't want to rely on discs. So I think once you show you're playing a disc, it kind of takes away a little bit of the magic.
Yeah.
So we don't usually like to do them. But like even a movie theater, I think, should have these backup copies if you can, or know somebody who does. Tom's another good example. We did this thing this summer where we had a movie theater owner for a day. And they got to pick whatever movie they wanted to. It was a contest they won back when we were playing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This guy wanted some 1980s, I think it's the Showa era Godzilla movies. They were his favorite. Nobody has a copy. You can't stream in the theater. You're going to have so much like quality loss. It's just not worth it.
Right.
So I have a couple. And then I messaged Tom and I was like, hey, Tom, do you have any, Showa era Godzilla movies? One of my managers, Sam, actually, he was like, this guy wants to play Godzilla. I bet you or Tom has some of these. And I was like, yep, I bet we do. And of course, Tom showed up with a stack and had the guy got to pick exactly which one he wanted to see. And that's just so awesome to be able to provide to people. And I'm hoping, so our cult movie night too, and this is where my Blu-rays will really come in handy. I want to start a rental service, but just like, I'm only going to rent out about 20 at a time. And only to people, we're going to kind of try and start turning cult movie night into like a membership. I want to try and start getting people involved in the movie selections more and like having them vote.
Interesting.
And then I want, like, we've got all these movies to share, and then I can start sharing some of these like Kinjite, and I can get some tailwind with guys like Tom or whoever and be like, okay, so of the movies you rented, which one of these do you want to play? Like, which do you think we could play? And that would just be so nice to provide to people. I mean, they're going to have to be trustworthy. I'm going to have to keep my disc very clean, or I'll use some of my backup copies. But it's just so much fun to be able to lend stuff out and like share those things you love. You don't have to say, oh, do you have a Hulu pass? Oh, I think it's on this. Oh, do you know how to pirate? Oh, let me download a torrent on your thing, which I don't really like doing anyways. I'm not really, I understand it. I actually am kind of happy it's out there because they might be archiving things that are going to be lost forever.
Sure.
People who can't afford a giant media collection, obviously, it's very important for them to get that. People who can't afford to even go to the movies, but they can afford somehow to get a file. I'm not going to decry that really, but I love the physical media. I love being able to pay people who made this thing. It always makes me upset when I know it's not really going to the people who made it necessarily, but even to pay the companies who are putting them out, like Vinegar Syndrome, Kino, all the big ones, Shout, they're doing such good work, and it's just fun. Like, I don't know, I get a kick out of it.
I love that. What I mean, you mentioned a couple there. What are some of your favorite boutique labels that you've been following lately?
So I'll have to pause and go grab one because I can't remember the name. It's a newer one. I mean, Shout was kind of one of the first. Like Shout, Arrow. Let me think of other big ones. Kino was one. Once I found Kino, I was like, oh, this is great. And that was where I got a lot of my Charles Bronson movies.
Of course.
Esteron has a new release thing, I think it's what it's called. I couldn't find the one, but it's My Best Friend is a Vampire. Let me look up real quick who put that out.
I believe that's one of those movies that is Vestron.
Oh, nice. So that was Vestron. All right. Yeah. That's a movie that I loved as a kid, kind of forgot about. And then I was like, I can't believe this is on Blu-ray now. And it came out on my birthday this summer.
Nice.
It was the best. So then also, I always kind of forget about Blue Underground.
Yes.
I have Deathstream here. Now, Deathstream I have seen. And if no one's seen Deathstream, this is a really overlooked horror movie. It's amazing. So Vestron, they've been putting out really good stuff. And then I just got Severin is the other one I wanted to bring up. So I got Dracula versus Frankenstein from Severin. And those are two that recently I've been checking out their catalogs. Like Vinegar Syndrome was the newest until I got into these guys. And then Vestron too.
Nice. Yeah, you mentioned Imprint earlier. Imprint is Australia, by the way, not the UK.
Okay.
They have done so much to like dive into the Paramount catalog, and there's so much that had never been on Blu-ray. It seems like every month they're putting something out that it's the first time on disc in the world, and it always just mystifies me that some of these have never been anywhere. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Love that stuff.
The other one is MVD Rewind Collection.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because they put out Vampire's Kiss recently. They re-released it, and I love that movie. So I was excited when I got it. I was like, "Oh, here's another label I haven't heard of." Then of course I'm going to have to go dig out what else they've been putting out.
And now I think they're up to 53 releases. So good luck.
Oh, shit. I'm so far behind. It's okay. I'm sure Tom has many of them.
I'm sure he does. Gosh, this has been incredible just to hear about the culture around this theater and what's going on in La Crosse. I hope if anybody's even within, a couple hour drive, go check out the Rivoli at least once, if not every cult movie night. There's so much going on. I wish I was closer. Maybe eventually I'll have to stop by. I told Tom I'd try to visit up there eventually anyways. So
yeah, well, we have Schlocktoberfest coming up on the 21st. That's it was kind of what I referred to as our smoke signal last year for weirdos. And like I said, led us into cult movie night. But we're not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. So you'll have plenty of opportunities to come to the theater. And Schlocktoberfest, we're trying to get it planned more and more, further in advance, I should say, so
Nice.
people can come and plan to go to it. I should say, too, one of our long-term goals, we want to do an independent Wisconsin Midwest Film Festival at some point. We played an independent horror movie made in Wisconsin called The Headmistress last April. Super fun. I want to do way more stuff like that. So we'll give you reasons to come to our theater, especially if you're in the Midwest. And if what we're doing now doesn't seem to be your cup of tea, we're trying to get more show times. We're going to start doing a women's brunch movie or a girls' night out movie. Because I really want to diversify. I feel like I got the nerds, I got the horror fans. We're coming. But I want to show other people what they love about movies. So, if what I'm saying hasn't gelled with you quite yet, still check us out.
Any big events coming up in November to get people excited about, since this will be going up in a week or two?
Well, we've got Killers of the Flower Moon for most of the month. So that's our big one we're trying to push. And I actually got a chance to see it when I was in California, and it's fantastic. It's a long one, but it's worth it. And then our cult movie night, I'm still trying to figure out what it is. It might be The Stuff, which I'm really trying to play. Because we want to do food movies.
Yep.
So those are our big ones. And then French Connection are our big November stuff. And then December, we're probably going to do our first mystery movie for cult movie night.
Oh, nice.
And have it be Unwrap Your Christmas Present. And then the other thing we started last year is a thing called Kung Fu Christmas. And we played Police Story 1 and 2, Kung Fu Hustle, and Enter the Dragon.
That's a hell of a lineup.
So it's the day after Christmas, because we're not open on Christmas Day. We do a lot of holiday classics and stuff, but then I was thinking well, once you're sick of Christmas movies, where do you go? And I know when my dad and I would skip church on Christmas, we'd go eat Chinese food. So that's where the Kung Fu Christmas came out. This year we'll probably go over some that I think Ong Bak we're trying to get and something like that.
Oh, sweet.
And if we can get the new John Woo movie, we'll probably roll that into it, and that'll be part of Kung Fu Christmas. And with Kung Fu Christmas, a buddy of mine made an emulator, a cabinet over COVID. It was his big COVID project.
Nice.
We're going to Rivoli brand it. I'm giving away the present now, but hopefully not too many Rivoli listeners will give it away. And we're going to wrap it like it's a gift. And we'll open it up at Kung Fu Christmas and have a couple fighting games on it.
Wow.
So people can do that. Yeah. So those are our next big months of things that are coming up.
That sounds
And then in
amazing.
January will be the 1 year anniversary of Cult Movie Night. And I'm going to try and make it a triple feature. I'm going to try and give it to fan vote. I might make everybody watch a Charles Bronson movie with me as a thank you. And also I get to put my finger down on one vote of these three movies. Or I'll play it as a fourth movie. And basically then I'll finally get up and say, anybody can leave if you don't want to see this.
You're allowed to leave.
Yes. Yeah, no, yeah, you're allowed to go. I promise the doors are not locked. Yes, that's all the other biggest stuff we have. And we have a kids party coming up. We have a dance festival coming up this weekend. There's so many other fun things going on. I'm sometimes so laser focused on the cult movie night stuff that I forget about all these other outside groups that are coming in that my sister and Sam have been setting up. Which really are some of my favorite things about it, because it wouldn't be fun if it was just me doing horror all the time.
That's true. God, that's amazing. Again, thank you, Jonathan, for doing this. This has been invigorating. I hope people take this not only as a sign for the Rivoli, but I guarantee pretty much probably 90% of the country, no matter where you are within an hour drive of a smaller art house theater. Support it. There's somebody like Jonathan there that is rabid for film, that is just dying to see somebody else come in and discover Jean-Claude Van Damme for the first time, or discover 12 to Midnight in January as Jonathan plays it at 3:00 in the morning and people are allowed to leave. It is something that it's just a joy to experience some of these on the screen. Jonathan, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.